Well, good morning. Thank you very much for being part of this program. We're very excited to be with you this morning and have a conversation about the Constitution and about what you have learned. And really very proud of you for having undertaken this, particularly during a difficult time in the life of the country. And we really admire you for the work you have put in. So my name is Robert Allison. I'm a professor of history at Suffolk University, which is in Boston, Massachusetts. And my colleagues are
I'm
Professor
Jack
Barlow.
Barlow. I am a professor of politics at Juniata College in Pennsylvania.
My name is Lindsay Draper, retired from the juvenile court bench in Milwaukee County, Wisconsin. And if you think they haven't heard me talk about St. Joseph Ogden, you're wrong. So I just don't want you to think you're anonymously appearing. You're not.
Yes. Well, we have heard about you, and now we would like you to introduce yourselves and your teacher and tell us a little bit more. So thank you.
All right. Good morning. My name is Evan Schmitz. Our teacher is Marshall Schacht, and I am going to study the electrical engineering at the University of Illinois next year. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our statement.
Hi, I'm Garen Meeker. I plan to go to Millikan University to study political science, and we're very happy to be here.
Good morning. My name is Gunnar Olson, and I plan on attending Eastern Illinois University to study broadcast journalism in the fall.
Great. So.
And I'm Marshall Schacht. Sorry to interrupt there. Marshall Schacht. I teach here. Hi, Lindsay. Good to see you. And I hope you guys are enjoying your day. So welcome to St. Joe.
Great, thank you. So we are Unit 2, and our overall topic is how did the framers create the Constitution? And the question we would like you to discuss this morning is, one founder claimed that representatives should, quote, refine and enlarge the public views by passing them through the medium of a chosen body of citizens whose wisdom may best discern the true interest of their country. It's the end of the quote. Do you agree or disagree with this claim? And then what alternative systems of representation did the founders consider? And what alternative systems of representation, if any, should be considered in the 21st century? So please begin.
In Federalist 10, James Madison promoted the idea of allowing for the people's opinions and ideas to be fine-tuned through representative to promote a more structured ability to push the country toward growth. It must be a standard that both of the houses must have people who encompass the basic civic virtues that embody our country as a whole. The limitations Federalists wanted for the Senate and House of Representatives differ, as stated in Federalist 62, because they are meant to work differently for the country. Our senators are meant to be a, quote, trustee of the republic and work in the best interest of the country as a whole. This is why they have longer term limits and are required to be older and therefore more experienced. They are the saucer that cools the cup. Representatives, however, must be the bridge between the people and Congress as they represent a district from one state. Representatives are elected more often at a younger age to get new voices and opinions into Congress often.
The founders of the United States had different views of how the government should be set up and how the citizens should be represented in their government. One significant argument was that of how states were represented. The Virginia Plan and the New Jersey Plan both countered each other's views of how the government should be created. The framers created the bicameral system of government through the Great Compromise that we use today to try to please everyone. But soon, with the creation of gerrymandering, many Americans were not being heard as loudly as others.
Gerrymandering is a prevalent issue in the makeup of our current system because it promotes the unfair advantage another party can have over a state. In the year 2020, because of political power given to one party to draw desired state districts, 62 out of 138 state legislative races on the ballot were uncontested in the state of Illinois. Gerrymandering promotes an unfair advantage while taking away people's voices. It fails for a representative of a legislative district to promote the ideas of the founders, which can be demonstrated by our representative.
The representative of the 15th District of Illinois was voted in during 2020, but she has taken her position of power and used it in problematic ways that did not fine-tune the words of the people, only exemplifying one group of them. To paraphrase our representative, on January 5th, she praised Hitler because he did one thing right by going for the youth of the future. The following day, she openly supported the insurrection at the Capitol and has voted against many bills that would protect some of the people who reside in her district, one being the Equal Protection Act. Our representative does not represent the beliefs of those she is supposed to represent, and instead she used her political power to exemplify the voices of a select group of people. She and many like her are the central issues within our current system of representation.
Currently, the primary problem with representation in the United States is the imbalance of wealth in Congress. Over half of all congressmen are millionaires as compared to the estimated 8% of the population. This is a direct result of the Supreme Court decisions Buckley versus Valeo and Citizens United versus FEC. There should be a limit on election spending to provide all politicians with an equal opportunity to be elected for their civic virtues and experience alone. Recently, the For the People Act has been suggested in Congress. This act establishes that campaign money is limited and responsibly spent. In addition, the country should incorporate a multi-party system to prevent Federalists' depiction of factions arising from the two-party system. If more parties were supported nationwide and permitted to participate in national debates, citizens would be more inclined to research the views and opinions of these different parties. More parties would be willing to work with each other. To achieve this goal, many current congressional practices would have to be amended or abolished, such as the filibuster, to eliminate tools for partisan fights. Overall, with a limit on election spending and the incorporation of more political parties, representation would be much more fair and effective.
American representation has an immense responsibility in protecting citizens' opinion and carrying out their desires. Many different ideas of representation were discussed at the convention, such as the New Jersey and Virginia plans. However, no plan is perfect. There is still improvements that need to be made, such as eliminating the two-sided war between political parties and gerrymandering. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I'm wondering if a multi-party system actually would solve the problem of factionalism or if it would make it worse.
So I think it would help to solve the problem of factions because whenever there are more parties, you can't consider one singular party to be your enemy because every party has their similarities and differences much more than now.
Every party would be your enemy then.
That's true, but whenever every party is your enemy, then you really can't get anything done in Congress. So you would have to be more willing to work with other parties to get anything passed. So working across the aisle would be much more common than it is today.
To add on to Evan's point, in Federalist 10, they did warn against fractions because they thought it would be more detrimental to our system, but we saw on January 6th that fractions didn't overtake the House. They got close, but they didn't. So inevitably, they can't tear us all down.
Thank you.
You talked in your opening statement, you mentioned the term civic virtue several times, but the founders didn't do anything systematic about encouraging civic virtue, right? So, I mean, would you support a plan that that did more to educate citizens about what their responsibilities were and how to think about politics?
I personally really would like that because if you don't educate the people on what is happening in our country, then they won't be able to intellectually be able to help decide on things like voting for representation in their own government.
I believe that's also a responsibility of the citizens by themselves to educate themselves on the workings of our government and the best politicians to vote for. So I don't think that's necessarily the founders' flaw, but maybe that is something they could have included.
So I may be straying a bit here, but okay, could you all mute yours for just a second? How do you educate a population when news sources share their version of the facts? And not everybody who saw the same event reports the same activity. How do you educate a population in a world where we get to choose whose version of the facts we learn from? How do you do that?
Well, I feel like you'd have to completely eliminate like political bias, which is going to be really, really hard to do, and I think would be impossible to do. Therefore, I think this is a impossible task. But at the end of the day, the only way I can see it is if you tried to unify all the like news outlets, but at the end of the day, that's just creating a monopoly on an opinion. That is not really that possible in our system the way it's set up.
So another potential solution is that, of course, there are many websites out there. There are many run by the government that give you fair, mostly unbiased news. So I think kind of advertising these websites, these unbiased news outlets is about the best you can do. And then you have to trust in the citizens that they'll go to these unbiased outlets rather than biased news sources.
To add on to Evan, I think you have to know that the news you're consuming is biased. Like, if you look at far left and far right news sources, you have to be aware that they are biased and they're presenting a biased opinion. So people have to search out unbiased news sources to understand the truth.
And I apologize. Are you of the impression that people really do look for things, or do they look for who's going to see the world the way I do?
I think that people look for what they see in the world the way they see it. So personally, I watch a lot of CNN because I like their stories because they tell it the way I think they should tell it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. It does seem to be an alarming thing to think that the government is going to tell us what we should think, and we'll seek out that as an unbiased source. I wonder what Madison would have made of that idea. Also, just to be fair, the members of Congress who are millionaires weren't all millionaires when they got there. And this does get to the problem of civic virtue. And I'm really wondering if you could say a little bit more. You know, Madison, as you are, saw the world saw these problems and said, well, what thing to do is what you suggest, make everyone think the same. But that's not going to be possible, as you've seen. The other is to try to mitigate the danger that factions can cause. So I'm really wondering if the various ideas you've proposed are going to mitigate the danger of faction, or if there is something else at work, some other. And again, I'm not really asking a very clear question, but wouldn't the solution to 62 of 138 elections being uncontested be just to encourage more people to run?
Yeah, I think one of the current problems right now is that a lot of people think that because if they're not millionaires, if they don't have all this wealth behind them, then they really can't run. They can't get their name out into the advertising, get their name into the vocabulary of the United States or their individual state. So I think one solution would be to do a public campaign finance where everyone is allowed to spend a set amount of money that's provided by the government or by individual commissions. But the thing is that everyone is limited. So everybody has an equal choice. Everyone has an equal chance at getting the seat, and that they're running solely on experience and the virtues that they show, and therefore people look for those rather than the amount of commercials they've seen.
Okay, so let's suppose, Evan, you're running for a seat in the Illinois legislature. You have $1 million. Where does that $1 million go? What do you have to spend it on?
I mean, a lot of times that just goes straight into advertising. It goes into commercials, radio advertising. I can do it for commercials directly for me or against the other political party.
So you have to pay someone else to post your ads. Who is that other person? Wouldn't the solution be to make them provide free advertising as opposed to make us pay for you to give money to the network?
I mean, that could be a potential solution, sure.
Okay. I don't know if it is. I don't know if it would be worse. Yes, Gunnar.
Adding on to the whole free advertising, you can look at it and you can say that free advertising is a good idea, but if you make free advertising for, say, TV, so many people could be running that there could just not be enough time slots for all those commercials. So I don't think it's a possible reason, like a reasonable thing to be able to, across the board, give everyone free advertising.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all. Well, this has been a very, very interesting discussion, and I did like the way you were thinking about the state of Illinois as you're looking at this, and you have very clear examples of things that are going wrong, and you're coming up with interesting solutions to this, and also rooted in, Federalist 10, Federalist 62, that is ideas of the founders about this. And so I really do applaud you for thinking about these issues seriously, and I hope you'll continue to think about them seriously as you go on in life. I mean, these are difficult, complicated issues. You've begun a discussion here, and I hope you'll continue it, because we really do need thoughtful people like you to be thinking through these various really real problems that we have. So congratulations, thank you, and I'll let the other judges give a few thoughts too.
So I thought that you put together the opening statement very nicely, right? I mean, talking about fine tuning people's opinions and so on. And, if we'd had more time, we could have talked about a whole lot of things. I was a little surprised that you didn't mention the fairness doctrine and the influence that it had on, or argument that it has an influence on news coverage, and whether restoring the fairness doctrine might produce something along those lines. I thought that it was good that you brought up the imbalance of wealth in Congress. And we might then have gotten into the distinctions between the House and the Senate, and whether the Senate should be the place where we put all the millionaires in the Senate, right? And which is what Governor Morris wanted, right? Represent the rich as rich, and give them a place, and then keep your eye on them, right? So that was well done. I have to ask though, two of you are in front of Illinois flags. One of you is in front of American flags. Is there something ideological going on here with your choice of flag?
Well, for starters, when we did our state competition, we had basically the same setup, but instead of 3 tables, we had 4 tables because we had some groups with 4 people. So originally we had 2 people with Illinois flags and 2 people with American flags. I think it's just like fun decoration and a good representation of our state.
And Garen took the best seat.
Yeah. We're like covering our symbol.
That's
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate having Lincoln overlooking our whole discussion here. I mean, I think that's that adds a little bit of tension for all of us, right? So thank you. It was a good discussion.
enjoyed hearing you. Want to talk to you about a couple of things, and one of them is, every time let's start over. I liked the fact that you took this question and its national implications and said, oh, and by the way, we're looking at this right in our district, that we see these things happening, and we've got someone, and by the way, one of the things that I at times worry about, because there are some people who do some things and vote some ways politically and say some stuff that scares the crap out of me. And what really scares me is that I'm not sure they don't represent a lot more folks than I think they do. So I listened to your wonderfully optimistic view of the populace, and I feel really good when I hear that, because I would truly hate for everybody to think the way I do. That would just really be frightening. The multi-party system question always makes me wonder how much attention people are paying to what's happening in Israel right now, where they can't manage to get a government to run the country for more than 2 to 3 months, or to Italy, where I think, if I remember the last time, and I know World War II sounds like a whole bunch of years ago, but I think they've had 50 different governments since then, only because the parties keep getting voted out. So I just want to, and the last thing, and it's probably a function of me being longer in the tooth than most of the folks in your world, I remember a time when the Republican Party had the Rockefeller and the Scranton and some other wings And then, and the same, the Democrats had some people who were very conservative and what that did was that caused everybody in both parties to talk to each other and find ways to work with the other people. I'm not quite sure what the answer is to what we have had other than the concept, and I apologize for this because I'm talking about my mom and my dad for a second, but one of the things that they tried to ingrain in their children was that great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people. If we could ever get to the place where we did not demonize other people, but talked about concepts, I think we could go a whole lot further. So you all did a really good job. I enjoyed listening to you. And I thank you and congratulate you and your teachers for the job that you have done. Good luck to you.
You're here. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much for coming. And Lindsay, it's finally great to have you finally. So thank you for coming by. All right. Thanks for your time and your comments. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.